Sometimes I am full of secrets, but sometimes you might have just missed a video or two. I have some things about me that I don't talk about constantly, but I live with every single day. I'm sure somebody else out there does too, and maybe will relate to this episode a little bit. We're doing things a little bit different here today, and it is just going to be me. And we're going to talk about something that is pretty vulnerable and that I don't talk to very many people about. Occasionally I talk about it on a video on Instagram, but it's not really the highlight of my page. But it is in my bio, so some people do notice that. This is Dysfunctional Alliance, the podcast where psychology, sex, and survival intersect. I'm your host, Nat, and today we are talking about multiple sclerosis. I have multiple sclerosis, and a lot of people aren't aware of that if they just checked out my Instagram page, because I do a really good job at hiding it. But there's more to an invisible disability than you might think. Okay, let's talk about it. So maybe you don't even know what multiple sclerosis is, and I'm here to teach you a little bit about that today. Hopefully we'll keep it pretty fun and light, but it'll still be educational. And I'll probably use some big words that you may not have heard before, and Google them if you want to. It's pretty intriguing, and I did a lot of Googling in this journey. So yeah, maybe there's something interesting, and Google will be your best friend. Good sources though. Make sure you're getting good sources. So a question that I get asked a lot is simply, what is MS? And MS is multiple sclerosis, and it's a disease of the nervous system. So your entire nervous system can be affected, from your brain to your spinal cord, all your nerves, all of that stuff can be affected by MS. And basically it is where your immune system attacks the coating of your nerves, which is called the myelin sheath. And basically, that myelin sheath keeps everything insulated. The best way that I can describe it is, or that I've seen it described, is like an extension cord. And so your brain and all the nerves in your spinal cord and all that, they're all an extension cord. And the coating, the orange coating, is the myelin sheath. And so if a part of that gets messed up, then all of the wires kind of like get messed up. Like if you chip some of that orange coating off of an extension cord, you get a short in your wire and things start messing up. Sometimes really bad. Sometimes things can catch fire if that orange coating is missing. And basically when things catch fire is what MS is. And things caught fire for me. There are 3 types of multiple sclerosis, 3 main types, and they are primary progressive, relapsing remitting, and secondary progressive. Relapsing remitting is the most common type. A lot of people have relapsing remitting, and that's basically where your symptoms kind of wax and wane. So you might have like a month where you're really symptomatic, and then you might have three months where you're kind of clear. Sometimes even longer. Sometimes people can go through like remissions for a really long time. All of it sucks, but relapsing remitting is like, sometimes you might have a little space. And then secondary progressive is when relapsing remitting starts to turn into the progressive form. So it's starting to get a bit more aggressive, and you're starting to not see as many remissions. You're starting to just get worse more quickly. And primary progressive is when you start right away and your symptoms rapidly progress. Maybe not rapidly, but they just progress. You don't have a lot of spaces where you're symptom free. I have primary progressive, and I have a very specific story with mine. I'm actually like one of those wild cards, and my doctors thought I was pretty fun and interesting. And today you're going to learn all about that journey and how crazy that was for me, because it was terrifying. And yeah, we'll talk about the journey. We'll talk about how I found out I had it, what my symptoms were. And then we'll talk about where I am now and how things look for me as a person with MS, a hot person with MS. So my first symptom of MS, my first really troubling symptom that I was like, this doesn't seem right, was my feet went numb. So like they felt like tingly, like pins and needles. So the best way I could describe it was like if you sit on the toilet and scroll and you're looking on Twitter and all of the places, and then you stand up and your feet feel all like fuzzy and like you're like, ew, why does it feel like this? That's what happened to my feet. And I genuinely thought for a few days, I was like, so I was a dancer and I was wearing heels with like the ties. And I figured out this new way that I thought was so genius and it felt so stable. And so I was like tying my shoes like that. But then a few days later, my feet went numb. And so I was like, okay, I did tie my shoes a little weird. Must be a matter of how I tied my shoes. I must have done it too tight. And I was like telling the girls at my club, I was like, don't make sure you're not tying your shoes too tight. Your feet could go numb. But then it like started to move up my legs. And so I had been talking to people about the chances of maybe it being like a pinched nerve or something like that. And once it started to like move up my legs, I remember I was talking to this one guy and I was like, is there like a pinched nerve that can like make it like travel like up your legs, the numbness? He's like, I don't know. That doesn't sound like any pinched nerve I've ever had. And so then I was like, okay, red flags, more red flags popped up. And so I went to the doctor and I told them like, my bottom half of my body is numb and it's pretty strange. And she did an x-ray and the x-ray didn't show anything, which now I know the x-ray wasn't going to show much, but that's okay. She did an x-ray and she was like, there's probably not a pinched nerve or anything. So kind of just like see what it is. I'll give you or kind of like go with the flow and I'll give you a referral to a neurologist and then she can see if there's anything weird. And so the referral that I got to the neurologist was like really far out. And so I was like, that's like kind of strange, right? Like I feel like this is pretty important. But then as I was waiting for that neurologist appointment, the numbness traveled up my body. So it continued to travel. It went from waist down to now my torso was numb. And then in the next few days, I was numb down to like my fingertips from my neck down. I was just all the way tingly, pins and needles. It was really weird. And then I went to a neurologist and I did not go to a good neurologist. And that was a very big mistake because I got really, really, really medically gaslit. And it was atrocious. And we're going to get into it. So I went to that neurologist and I told her like what was going on. There were some red flags with that doctor, like right away. At one point I remember I told her that I smoked cigarettes because I was like a pack a day smoker at the time. And I told her that I smoked cigarettes and she was like, well, I have to tell you, you need to stop smoking cigarettes. But like, if you don't, you don't. Like, it was kind of like one of those things where she was like, I'm forced to tell you to stop smoking cigarettes. And then I said, I had a medical card, like a medical marijuana card. And she was like, absolutely not. You can't do that. That's going to make everything so much worse for you. So if you have like the same thought process as me, you kind of can see like where her mind was, because in my brain, kind of like giving a pass to cigarettes over a joint is insane. But that's beside the point. There were red flags all throughout that appointment. But she did give me an MRI of my brain and the MRI came back clear. So I was like, well, that's weird. And so I was like really confused. And then she gave me another MRI and this one was of my spinal cord, my C-spine. So cervical spine, which is like in your neck. And in that MRI, it came back that there was like a relatively large lesion, just one. And there was none in my T-spine. Thoracic spine, if you're curious about that. So there was none in my T-spine. There was one in my C-spine, none in my brain. And so we were like, okay. She diagnosed me with something called transverse myelitis, which is kind of, it seems similar to MS, like spinal symptoms, but it's different. It's like usually one lesion and your symptoms kind of get better after a little while. Some people don't. Like sometimes it's like really crazy. But the thing about transverse myelitis is a lot of conspiracy theorists specifically like anti-vaxxing conspiracy theorists, are under the impression that the COVID vaccine caused transverse myelitis numbers to go up. And so as soon as she like diagnosed me with transverse myelitis, she was like, I bet you got the vaccine, didn't you? And I don't have the COVID vaccine. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I just didn't get the COVID vaccine. And so I was like, no, I never got it. And she was so shocked because I'm pretty darn sure she is one of the people that believes transverse myelitis is caused by the COVID vaccine, which is just kind of crazy. Like to like push, kind of like serve it on a platter, serve that theory on a platter to a patient is diabolical, low key, but it gets worse. So I was having some other symptoms that are related to MS, can be related to transverse myelitis too, because the symptoms do overlap. But I was having some really scary ones. Like I was having one, I do have one that's called the MS hug. And at the time I didn't know it was called the MS hug. All I knew was that it felt like my rib cage was squeezing. Like it felt like my ribs were squeezing in on each other, or like somebody put like a rubber band around my like torso right here and was just like really pulling it, like tied it around me like 6 times. And so that one like really freaked me out. And I wasn't aware of it before, because before my body went numb, I had that symptom before. And I thought I was having a heart attack multiple times. I went to the hospital multiple times because I thought that I was having a heart attack. And I was just having like my first MS symptoms. We just didn't know it yet. So pretty crazy to like think about. But I was having that pain. That pain. And then I was having just like really bad nerve pain. So this is like 2 years ago also. I didn't mention that. When everything first started, it was in March-ish of 2023. So pretty crazy time. And so after I had that pain, it basically was like, it would start in my joints. So like my elbows, my shoulders, my wrists, and it would just like shoot down to the next joint. And it was really, really, really bad. And then I also had muscle spasms, which were really noticeable. I can't even like pretend, like I can't act it out, but basically it would be, so it's something called an intention tremor. And basically an intention tremor is like whenever you go to reach for something, like when you have an intention to do something, your hand like bounces, and it's a very specific like neurologic symptom. And so basically like my hand would kind of like bounce like this when I was going to do something. Like if I was handing somebody something, my hand would like shake a little bit while I was doing it. Not a little bit, a whole lot. I actually have like old videos on my Instagram where you can tell that my hand is bouncing like that. And yeah, that was like muscle spasms. And so those were like my main symptoms. I might have forgotten some, but those were the ones that like really sent me to a neurologist. Whenever we got my C-spine, we found that lesion in my C-spine, I was still like pretty concerned that it was MS, but my doctor wasn't. But I still asked them, I was like, can we just like do the test to make sure it's not? And the test to make sure it's not MS and it is just transverse myelitis is a lumbar puncture or a spinal tap. And they're the same thing. So yeah. Basically they put this giant needle into your spinal cord, like through your spine and all that, into your spinal cord, and they pull out your spinal fluid, and then they test for like proteins in it. And for MS patients, people with MS have something called O bands in their blood, usually, sometimes, most of the time. And O bands, you don't really see them in other places, especially not with transverse myelitis. So it's a ruler, like you can rule things out with knowing if there's O bands. And so I was like, let's just do it just to make sure. And she's like, okay, yeah, sure. Now, in this time, I'm so sorry. I'm like itching my legs. I got bit up in some grass. So now there's like all these little bug bites all over my legs and they itch so bad. But anyways, the neurologist gave me the spinal tap and I had just gotten pregnant, which that is a whole other story in and of itself. Maybe I'll tell you guys that one day. Actually, I think I have told you guys that. Or I don't know. Maybe I'll tell you guys again if I have said it already, or for the first time if I haven't. So I had just gotten pregnant, surprisingly, very surprisingly, and I was like, I'll still do the lumbar puncture because this is very important. I need to know if my life is going to be affected. Like, MS very much affects having a baby for me specifically. But I needed to know like what to be aware of in the future. So I was like, okay, I'll get this test and I'll be good. And so I got the test pregnant. And I waited to get the results for a while. They said it took a while, but I was waiting like a while, like maybe 2 months. And I was like, this is kind of taking a while, like too long. And so I called the doctor's office and they got in touch with the place, got in touch. I'm pretty sure they just went back in their books and realized that they didn't send for the O-bands test, which was the only thing in the test we needed. So never got that result, which is really upsetting because basically they're just like, okay, yeah, it's transverse myelitis, girl. Go, you're going to be good. Have your baby. And so another thing is whenever MS is autoimmune. So it means your immune system is attacking. So whenever your immune system fires up for anything, it's attacking your spine. For me, my spinal cord. And so what was I even talking? Oh, so when you're pregnant, your immune system is suppressed. So when you're pregnant, your symptoms kind of go away for a little bit. And after some research, I learned that like 3 to 6 months later after having a baby, sometimes, not every time, but kind of often, women will have like relapses of their MS after like 3 to 6 months after they have a baby. And so I was pretty good though. Like I had very minimal symptoms. Like my pain was pretty low and I was able to walk around and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh yeah, things are good. I'm going to be able to just be who I was. It's just transverse myelitis. I just dealt with transverse myelitis for a little bit. I was wrong. I had my baby early, likely because I have MS, and like literally on the nose, like 3.5 months after he was born. No, probably like 4.5 months after he was born. I was chopping some vegetables because I was making dinner, and my hand literally felt like the bones in it broke. Like, and I was like, whoa, like I literally fell to the floor and I was like, I think I broke my hand or something. Like, I don't know how I would have done that, but that's what it feels like. Maybe I was gripping the knife too hard or something, which is insane. I don't think a human has ever broken their hand holding a knife too hard. That's insane. And if they did, that'd be like frightening. But that's what I thought happened. So I was like, oh my God. And then the pain like jumped to my other hand. And so I was like, oh no, I'm having really bad nerve pain again. And so after a couple of days of like having really, really bad pain, then my muscles started to spasm and I was starting to like have the bouncing hand again, the intention tremor, and also just things were a lot more intense. Like it was way stronger than it was before. And so I was like, this is pretty crazy. I went to my doctor and I got another MRI done and of my C-spine this time. And it said that the lesion grew. Now, it said the lesion grew and my doctor was like, yeah, it's bigger. And that's strange for MS. I mean, for transverse myelitis. But like she literally gave me like nothing after that. And so I looked at the MRI myself, and you guys, I like read the results, and the results to this MRI said, it said like the sizing changed, that it grew, and it was like taking up that part of my spinal cord now. And then after that, it said may be like concerning for neoplastic properties or something like that. And so I Googled what neoplastic properties means. And the MRI, the person who went over my MRI was basically saying in that report that it could be a tumor growing in my spinal cord. And she didn't tell me that. And so I called and I'm like, hey, why does it say like that a tumor might be here? And you didn't tell me that. And she was like, oh, so basically that they said that, but the only way we could test for that is if we do a biopsy. So like, we're just going to treat you for like with the steroids, and we're going to see how that helps. But we don't want to give you a biopsy of your spinal cord, because then you'll be paralyzed. Likely you'll be paralyzed for like ever, maybe. And so I was like, like, what? We're just going to leave that up in the air? Is crazy. And so I then asked for a second opinion. At this point, I was like, let's go to the big boys. And so I got a referral to Cleveland Clinic, and they got me in like very, very quickly. And at that first appointment that I had with them, my symptoms were really, really bad at this point. Like, I was using like a motor scooter to get into the appointment, because my legs were just like they had so much nerve pain, so much muscle weakness, and they were spasming really badly. Everything hurt. Like, they had me on my first neurologist had me on a medicine that's basically like the Tylenol of nerve pain medicine. And it wasn't helping me at all. And so I kept telling them, like, I need something different. This isn't helping me. And I'm having other pain that I think needs to be addressed. And because I was having the muscle spasms, and I didn't have anything to address muscle spasms. And so I had been telling her that, and she kept saying like, oh, just increase. So basically she was telling me that I could take up to 18 of the pills that she was giving me a day. And I was like, are you fucking out of your mind? Like, I'm not taking 18 of these. What are we talking about? So I was just kind of, that's when I like really got into edibles and like RSO. And that helped me like a bit. Like, it helped me to like be able to live at least and not be like crying in pain. But I wasn't able to like do anything basically without really hurting myself. So it was really depressing. But at that first Cleveland Clinic appointment, they were like, this is weird, and we're pretty concerned about this. So we're just going to admit you to the hospital. And so I got admitted to the hospital, and so many tests were ran. Like, it was actually insane. You can look at like my test results, and it just scrolls and scrolls. You could scroll for probably like 20 seconds, 25 seconds, which is insane. And they did like PET scans and like lots of different things like that were, excuse me, way too scientific for me. Things that I was like, whoa, that's a pretty insane test. Another lumbar puncture. And actually the first one failed. So I had 2 more lumbar punctures and just like a whole bunch of things. I was there for a week. And basically the end of that journey, they told me, we're going to put you on something called the tumor board, which is basically like all of the top doctors, like top neurosurgeons, oncologists, because at this point they had also referred me to an oncologist. So I was like, it was a dark time. I was literally a brand new mom. I couldn't walk. I had to go to a rehabilitation center to like teach me how to like lift my legs and walk around again. And like my goal on my rehab list for, I think maybe occupational therapy, was I just want to be able to hold my son without any pain. And yeah, I'm kind of able to do that now. So that's a plus. But it was a really, really, really dark time. There was so many things going through my head, all of that. And then on top of that, they were like, you might have cancer. And I was like, holy shit, this is nuts. And so I got put on the tumor board, and the next step before they did, like they were going to look at my MRI results, and then they were going to come back and say whether or not they wanted to do a biopsy. So basically, it was like, we're going to look at these and decide if you're just going to be like not able to function or if you are going to be paralyzed. And I got my MRI done and luckily got it done just in time because the MRI that I got was insane. Like the results of it were insane. I had like I think 5 more defined lesions throughout my spinal cord. So I started with the one in C1, C2, and I ended up with a large one in C1, C2, a pretty large one in C2 or C3, C4, a pretty large one in T1, and maybe like T4, T5, which is that's like the where the spaces are in your spinal cord. So from my C spine, the top, very top of my C spine down to the very bottom of my T spine, which is like in the middle of your back, had just a bunch of holes in it and like some patchy holes. So like some parts where it was starting to disintegrate but hadn't fully disintegrated. And so I went from 1 lesion to like 6 lesions in a matter of a month and a half to like 3 months. And they immediately got me on a treatment to start working on that and to get things, to get my immune system to stop attacking my spinal cord, basically. And so to do that, I'm on an immunosuppressant, which I only have to do 2 times a year, so that's pretty convenient. But the inconvenient part is that I have no B cells, so I don't have an immune system. It's really easy for me to get like skin infections and like infections and cuts, UTIs, like lung infections, upper respiratory infections. So just like a whole bunch of stuff I'm really susceptible to. So I have to like make sure I'm not around sick people and all that jazz, which is pretty crazy. It's a little bit scary to think about, but I really do my best to like avoid that thought in my head. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes I'm probably around some sick people because I forget to ask. You know, it happens. Oh, well. And I haven't like died yet. So it seems like we're kind of in the clear low key. Okay. So another question. Another question that I get asked a lot is like, what is life like for me now? And so after I got out of that rehab center, I got a wheelchair. And immediately after, I was pretty much always in the wheelchair and wasn't really able to do much. Well, I wasn't able to do much like actively, so I wasn't like able to get up and like do all the things that I was used to, you know? And that was a really weird time for me. And it was just like, it was pretty dark also because I just couldn't I felt kind of trapped, you know? And then slowly but surely I started working on just getting more time up out of my seat, like time maybe in the kitchen cooking or doing stuff like that. And now I'm able to walk I have a limp and I have like medicine that I take because if I don't have my medicine, then I'm not functioning well. So I can walk with some caveats, like the limp is there, and then also some things are needed to ensure that that's a thing that can happen. And on top of that, I also have something called vasovagal dysfunction or dysregulation. And so basically you have something called a vagus nerve, and your vagus nerve controls like your sweating and your anxiety and like going to the bathroom. I won't get gross or anything, but like using the bathroom and things like that. It's also like the thing whenever you get blood drawn, vasovagal syncope. If you get your blood drawn, you pass out. It's because you have vasovagal syncope. And basically, oh my goodness, basically the dysfunction or dysregulation of that means that sometimes I just randomly go into syncope and I'm like ready to pass out, which often is when I get overheated because my body doesn't like control its temperature very well. So I haven't been able to, I was very active when I first got diagnosed or whenever I first started being symptomatic. I was really active and I was a dancer. So I was like literally working out like 8+ hours a day because it was my job. And after I got like obviously the muscle weakness, but then also the syncope added onto that and the dysregulation, it really makes it difficult to like do super active things. And so I feel like I miss out a lot on stuff sometimes, but I try to make the best of all of everything I can. So, and that usually looks like getting a lot of work done and then doing a lot of family activities because that's what my body can manage. And it works out for me. It works out pretty well. There are moments, I call them my MS attacks, where I just can't do anything basically. And it's like I overheat. So what happens during the MS attacks, as I call them, is basically if I overheat, which is very easy, I could overheat just standing in a room, like a cool, doesn't even have to be hot. My body can just start overheating, especially if I'm like doing like something slightly active, like say wiping down a counter or sometimes doing the dishes. Sometimes doing the dishes is difficult though because it is warm. Like my hands, parts of my body are getting warm, which then makes my entire body overheat. And in those moments, basically, they're so embarrassing. I look like a drunk person. My words slur really bad, and it's just like my spinal cord is really overactive. It's doing things that it's not supposed to do, or it's messing up in places that it's supposed to be. And so it gets really hectic and kind of dangerous sometimes. So I'm not as active as I used to be. And that is something that is disappointing to have lost. But something that I thought I was going to lose was cooking, especially because I said that story about the chopping. And I really thought that was going to be something that I'm not able to do. And I am. And I really love that. That makes me super happy. I'm able to do stuff. Sometimes I need to bring my wheelchair into the kitchen, but that's fine. And I still do use my wheelchair pretty regularly, especially if I've had like a really long few days. Like I work whenever I go on like work trips for like the podcast or collab trips or anything like that. I really work my body a lot because I have a really like rigorous work timeline, I guess, in my head. And so I really overwork my body. And then sometimes I end up hurting myself really bad. And then I end up having to use my wheelchair more because my body is just kind of recouping. And that recoup time is really, really necessary sometimes because I'll feel like I'm able to do stuff and I'm really not able to, and I'll try to. And I'm like, oh, that wasn't a good move for you, girl. Not a great one. And so I try to like kind of balance it by if I do have a really hard work trip. Like, so I've had a really, really rough week. And I probably at some point will tell you guys about the entirety of it. I'll touch on it a little bit today, but I won't go full deep into it because it's a whole lot. But my body has just been really overworked and really messed with kind of. And so I have been using my wheelchair. I have it with me now actually for after I get done here, because I have to go down some steps, and then I have more stuff to do afterwards where I have to be using my legs. I think that's what a lot of people don't see, is it's kind of like the invisible disease or invisible disability. There are so many people that have like those invisible disabilities. Mine isn't even completely invisible because I do have a limp, and so I feel like really insecure about my limp. But the aftermath is really the part that people don't see. Being in front of the camera all the time is one thing, so people think that that's me, which it is. Like, I am the fun girl that likes to like turn around and show off her ass. But after after the cameras turn off, I have to sit down immediately. Sometimes I can't do anything for sometimes a couple of days. Like, sometimes one little activity can be the only thing I can do for the day. Some like going to going to a park might be the only thing I can put on my schedule for that day, because I know that the sun's going to be out. I'm going to be hot, and when I'm hot, I can't talk, or like my legs a little bit slower and things are just a bit more difficult. So it's difficult to be in the public eye, and especially in the public eye standing up and doing things. But that's another thing, is like, I'm really like, so I'm standing up in my videos, but you don't ever see me doing anything that's like rigorous. Like, maybe you see me stretch, but stretching is really important for my MS because it helps with my nerve pain. But you haven't really seen me do anything super rigorous, like a jog or a workout machine or anything like that. And that's because it's just not a possibility for me. So like, standing really isn't that difficult. Like, especially like, yeah, I'm usually close to a wall or have a seat close by. My wheelchair's like somewhere within reach. So it's like, standing is like the little bit that I can do. And people will be like, oh my God, you're clearly not sick. You can stand up. And I'm like, okay, put me in some hot water for a minute. Like, I promise you'll disagree very quickly. And so that kind of like brings me into the topic of ableism, because I did experience ableism at a very high degree for the first time this week. And I'm still very sensitive about it, so I'm not gonna get too into it. But I was in a situation where people had a lot of control over me and control over my medication and my access to my medication, and basically bullied me. I didn't have my meds, and one of my medications specifically is one that I can't miss. And if I do miss it, I get really sick. It sent me to the hospital 3 times, which I hate so much because I don't like the fact that I'm sick enough to be sent in an ambulance 3 times in like 6 months. It's pretty embarrassing to me. I wouldn't think that for other people, but for me, I'm like, girl, that's so much. And so that medicine was something that I missed. And at one point, when I asked for a wheelchair, there was like audible laughter. And when I missed my medicine and I was throwing up, there was like people mocking my gags because I was throwing up, and telling me that I was lying about my disability, and basically like showing the epitome of ableism. It was like really, honestly, it was like my nightmare. I felt like I was like living in an actual nightmare because I was just like almost being punished because my body didn't work. Like, very much being punished because my body didn't work. And I'm not going to get too emotional, but that's a crazy feeling. Like, because like at one point there was like, oh, she doesn't want to stand up and things like that. And to where like, yes, I do. I would love to stand up. I want to go do cartwheels down the hallway. Like, I want to get up and do jumping jacks right now, but I can't. Like, my legs don't work. They're especially not working right now when I don't have my medicine. And I'm just like, it's a lot. And seeing how genuinely evil people can be is an eye-opening experience, to say the least. Like, it's really, people can be evil, like actually, like to their core. And when they get into positions of power, it's scary. That shit is fucking scary. Like, I genuinely think I could put what I experienced in a movie and it would be a horror movie. Like, it, like some Ari Aster shit, like for sure. And so overall, like, I guess my point of saying all of this is just, you can be hot and have a disability. Like, at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of people think that I'm not disabled or I'm clearly nothing's wrong with me because I'm pretty. Basically, at the end of the day, that's what it is. They're like, you look normal. Like, who cares if you have a limp? Your face is fine, so obviously you're not sick. You're not using your wheelchair right now. The idea of an ambulatory wheelchair user is like completely lost on people. And there are so many ambulatory wheelchair users. Like, not everybody who uses a wheelchair is completely unable to use their legs. Sometimes people like me that just need like to sit, like I just need to sit. I will literally take a seat on the floor. And so that's where my wheelchair came in handy, because I was like, cool, I don't have to take a seat on the floor. Like, now I have like a seat right here that I can just sit in, so that if I'm at the mall, I don't have to fucking sit down in the American Eagle on the ground next to the sweaters and the jeans. It's not fun and it doesn't look cute. I didn't like it. So yeah, like, just because, don't see a hot person today and think there's nothing wrong with her, because there might be. You really never know. She literally might pull up on you with the wheelchair, with the cane, you know? Baddies with canes. I think that should make a pop off. Baddies with canes needs to, let's bring it right now. Ableism is really just like, it's really serious. And I've always seen like the isms. I've always seen like the race side of things, because I grew up in like a very white area, went to a very white school. All of my schools were very white schools. And so I've always experienced the racism form of the isms, but the ableism form was, I think it's more terrifying, because like there's really nothing you can do. Like, there was nothing I could do to like make them happy, like to give them what they wanted. I wasn't able to do that. I wasn't able to stand up. And also I wasn't able to, like, I just wasn't, it was just like, I'm not able to do it. Like, I felt super powerless. And for me, disability has made me feel very, not powerless. I've grown into making it kind of my superpower, I guess. But I feel like I've lost my independence, to say that, like, to put it into like some shorter words. I've always been a super independent person, literally on my own since like the day I was legally able to be, and always did everything by myself. And so not being able to do everything by myself is quite a switch from anything I've ever experienced. Even when I was a kid, like, even though I wasn't technically on my own, I was still like the person that was cooking dinner and making sure the house was clean and doing all the stuff, like sometimes literally going to fucking Kroger to pay the bill, like I was doing the shit myself forever. So I'm so used to being the person that does the shit. And now I'm not even able to sometimes not even able to open up my own soda bottles. I broke a nail opening a freaking water yesterday because my hands were too weak. Like, this shit's real. But I did get some really strong glue, and that shit's on there. I don't even remember what nail it was. That's how good it's on there. I really think that's all. I'll find like one or two other questions that I can answer quickly, and then we can go from there. Okay. I found a few. The first one that I will answer is what's the most ridiculous thing you've pushed through just to avoid looking lazy? And honestly, I have pushed through so many things just to avoid looking lazy. Like I do a whole lot of like TikToks and reels, and I will make sure that I do it. Not even just to avoid looking lazy, but more so just to like live up to my plan, like my idea of what I'm supposed to be doing. And so sometimes it's like way overkill and I'm hurting my body, and I still do it just because I'm like, I'm not lazy. I got this. So pretty often. I do that pretty often. What is something funny that's happened because of your MS symptoms? And I honestly can't believe I'm telling you guys this because it's actually insane. But I have like very minimal bladder control. That's a good invisible disability that you guys don't know about. I don't have like any bladder control, and having a baby doesn't help that. But the spot that is affected, one of the spots in my T-spine, it like affects your bladder control. And so I can't tell when I have to pee until I exactly have to pee. And then it's really difficult to like hold it in. So one time I was staying at this really cute Airbnb, but it had like, you had to go down a little ladder, and the little ladder was difficult for me because MS. And I had to pee so bad getting out of the bed, and the bathroom was downstairs right in front of the ladder. And so I was going, and I was trying so hard to make it down, but I was having a really difficult time getting down, and I peed myself. I peed right off the ladder. And the floor was like, it was like hard floor there. So I was like, I can't get it like on carpet or anything. That would be awful. And so like, since it was happening, I just like, I cannot believe I'm saying this right now. That I don't know why I'm saying this, but yeah, I did that. And it was really embarrassing, but it's a pretty fucking funny story. You hate to see it. If my MS had a personality, what would it be? It would definitely be like a really moody drama queen. Like, because whenever she wants to be like really bitchy, she does. And yeah. And then the last one is, what do you wish people would stop saying to disabled folks? Honestly, my least favorite thing in the entire world, and I hope if anybody ever watches this video, please just listen to this sentence. Listen to this sentence. Please stop saying like, oh, well, you must be getting better. Oh my God, it actually infuriates me. Like, just because I'm having a good day does not mean I'm getting better. Because literally the end of that night, I could be like in the hospital or like struggling to get into my bed. So yeah, just like stop saying that. Please stop saying that. With that being said, thank you guys so much for listening. This is Dysfunctional Alliance, the podcast where psychology, sex, and survival intersect. And I hope you guys learned a little bit of something about this episode, and maybe you'll have something to talk about with somebody that you know with MS. I will see you guys next time. Bye.